Welcome to Father Matt's Bible Studies and Sermons videos and podcast. In today's Bible study, we study the Pentateuch, beginning with Genesis and continuing with Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy. God bless you and hope you enjoy the Bible study. Let us pray. Almighty God, we ask your blessing on our Bible study. We pray that it does not snow again this year, and all this we ask through Christ our Lord. Amen.
Amen.
All right. At least not here. Maybe in the mountains it can snow. All right. We are reading Exodus. We are in the middle of what's called we're near the tail end of it, of what's called the Covenant Code, and it's on Mount Sinai and delivered to Moses, and we'll probably actually get the actual covenant itself today at the end of what we're reading. So I will show it to you in just a couple of things. Let me unshare just because. Can you see? Is the screen okay, or is it too big?
Exodus 23, justice for all.
Yeah,
Right.
we can see it.
It's okay to read from
Yeah.
Okay. All right. It's set up slightly differently on mine than usual. So if we go back to Exodus when we started this, right, we started it with the Ten Commandments, and then the Covenant Code started right after that. Remember, there was this business of thunder and lightning and the trumpet, and Moses draws near, and then the Lord says to Moses, and then we get this giant Covenant Code. This is actually what we've been reading the last couple of weeks is a really good example of one of the problems of biblical literalism. And I don't mean like in terms of, Adam and Eve literal stuff. I mean more like, Ed, can you do me a favor and close my door? Thank you. I mean in terms of if you start pulling sort of proof text verses out in terms of how people should behave. We've had some very good ones in terms of how to treat widows and orphans, but we've also had some very problematic ones in terms of like people selling their children, right, into slavery. And so you do run into a problem if you start quoting, obviously, or saying things like, which we all do, like, obviously so-and-so hasn't read the Bible because they don't treat their neighbor well, or they don't treat foreigners well, or this or that. But then you get this whole business of, like, right here in verse 7, when a man sells his daughter as a slave, right? Like, that's a problematic verse from certainly from our perspective. And it's in the law on Mount Sinai. And frankly, it's actually earlier in this law than the eye for the eye stuff, or if you injure somebody's ox or what have you. The order sometimes does matter. And so I just want to highlight that reality exists, that if you get into the habit of going back and forth with people about what the Bible says, remember that there's a lot of stuff that probably most of us really don't want to have to quote in terms of saying. It also says this, like, when a man sells his daughter as a slave is not a great starting point for a sentence. All right. Let's do 23. We've been in the middle of reading things. I think last time it was, what was it? It was about resident aliens, lending money. We talked about Jesus and, give him your cloak and that sort of thing. Give your firstborn, and your people consecrated to me. Don't eat meat that is mangled in the field, that sort of thing. Kind of all over the map in terms of what the laws are. And it continues here. This is more about legal stuff. So, Patrice, you're first on my list here. Can you read this, actually basically this page?
Justice for all. You shall not spread a false report. You shall not join hands with the wicked to act as a malicious witness. You shall not follow a majority in wrongdoing. When you bear witness in a lawsuit, you shall not side with the majority so as to pervert justice, nor shall you be partial to the poor in a lawsuit. When you come upon your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, you shall bring it back. When you see the donkey of one who hates you struggling under its burden, and you would hold back from setting it free, you must help to set it free. You shall not pervert the justice due to your poor in their lawsuits. Keep far from a false charge, and do not kill the innocent and those in the right, for I will not acquit the guilty. You shall take no bribe, for a bribe blinds officials and subverts the cause of those who are in the right. You shall not oppress a resident alien. You know the heart of an alien. For you are aliens, in the land of Egypt.
Great. Okay. So we've already gotten resident alien stuff, right? We saw that up here. You shall not wrong or oppress a resident alien. So we've already gotten that, interestingly. So it does get repeated a couple of times, which is kind of, I think, kind of interesting. This section, I think on first glance, it's kind of like, okay, yeah, you're supposed to be, a just and nice person, basically. But it's interesting, if you think about it, it's interesting that some of these things are built into the law. Like what, God commands the people to do includes, this first part, okay, you don't get to be a false witness or a malicious witness. But a little further beyond that, like you don't get to get bullied by a majority either, right? You have to stand up against the majority in terms of wrongdoing, which is fascinating that that's built in the law, right? You don't just get to stand aside and kind of get swept away with the mob. And when you're a witness in a lawsuit, you don't get to hide with the majority just because they're perverting justice. Like you have to be the one that stands up if you know justice is there. And this is interesting. It goes both ways, right? You're also not supposed to be partial to the poor in a lawsuit. So you can't, you have to be just across the board. You can't just favor the rich. You can't just favor the poor. You can't just favor the majority, which is, I think it's interesting that it's built into this. And then these next two verses are, I think, really fascinating. When you see your enemy's ox or donkey going astray, you shall bring it back, right? Like think about that for a second in terms of it being built into the law. You don't get to ignore this something that's not ideal for your neighbor, even if you don't like your neighbor, right? If you hate your enemy and you see their dog wandering around or their ox or whatever, you got to bring it home. That's just fascinating. That's in the law if you think about it. Same one with this one. When you see the donkey of one that you hate struggling under its burden, and you don't feel like helping and setting it free, you still have to do it. We talked a little bit about like Hammurabi and that sort of thing. This sort of stuff is not in other law codes. This is interesting that this is here, and it does take you to sort of another level of ethics and morals that most of the other law codes, as far as I know at least, don't seem to have, where it really begins to, when you think about some of the stuff that Jesus says about going the extra mile and loving your enemies, well, it's in here. It actually is already in here. Maybe not loving, but you at least have to help them out. You got to help them out. We saw you can't be partial to the poor. You also can't pervert justice to the poor. Like you got to treat the poor just as everybody else. And no bribes, no killing of the innocent, that sort of thing. And again, repeated, you shall not oppress a resident alien. And that one, unlike the others, has a reason. Why? Because you know the heart of an alien, and you are aliens in the land in Egypt. So it's something, and if we look back up, you get this, right? Why? For you are aliens in the land of Egypt. So there's, and remember, if you remember at one other point, there was something, I'm not sure if I can find it, but it said basically like you might become a widow or an orphan, or your family might, so you need to treat them well too. So there's another thing that's interesting in this law code is it's not don't do A, don't do B, don't do A, don't do B. It's it's occasionally at least, don't do A because X, Y, and Z for yourself, your history or your background, or it might happen to you, which is a little unusual. All right, anything on this justice for all section?
Sounds a bit like the motto on the Central Criminal Court in London, England, which
Justice,
is defend the children of the poor and punish the wrongdoer.
Yeah, that's a lot of what's in here. Though this would say don't be partial to anybody. Don't be partial to anybody. All right, let's move on. Sabbath and sabbatical year and Sabbath. Patrice, I'm going to ask you to read this again just because it's short and we can go a little further.
3 times in the year you shall hold
Nope, no, further up, 6.
Oh, sorry.
Yep.
6 years you shall sow your land and gather in its yield. But the 7th year you shall let it rest and lie fallow, so that the poor of your people may eat, and what they leave the wild animals may eat. You shall do the same with your vineyard and with your olive orchard. 6 days you shall do your work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, so that your ox and your donkey may have relief, and your home-born slave and the resident alien may be refreshed. Be attentive to all that I have said to you. Do not invoke the names of other gods. Do not let them be heard on your lips.
Okay. So, obviously, I think these are Sabbath-related things. And I think probably people don't read them very often. And if they do, they just fly through it and say, okay, Sabbath. A couple of things to note. There's no link here to God rested on the 7th day. There's no link to creation. There's no link to nothing. And that doesn't mean that it predates it or anything like that. It's just interesting that where we just heard for you are aliens in the land, now we just get this. So there's a reference point sometimes that certain narrators go back to, and this narrator is not the one that goes back to creation and the 7th day God rested, for what that's worth. That's the priestly narrator. We'll run into that person again when the building of the tabernacle starts up. But this narrator always goes back to you were aliens in the land. And that's kind of the reference point that keeps coming up. Also, if you were to play this out in real time and everybody did it at the exact same time, you'd run into a big problem, right? If everybody had the Sabbath year for their fields, all of their fields at the exact same time, that's a farming disaster. And I think it's just worth noting. And again, this gets into the 7-day creation and everybody observing. It's also not linked to the Sabbath itself. It doesn't say here that everybody has to do it at the exact same time, right? It seems to imply that you might have 6 fields or 7 fields and you can do this. This is good farming to let a field, lie fallow for a year or whatever, or change the crops and that sort of thing. So it's built into the law, but it's worth noting that it doesn't say that everybody has to do it at the exact same time, right? So that all the fields must be this and that. Because frankly, the 7th year, that also would mean the poor only get to eat every 7 years, right? So the idea here is that of your, however many fields you have, every 7 years rest one of them, that sort of thing. And if everybody's doing that, there's always fields where the poor can go through and eat, and it's also good for you and the wild animals can eat as well. And you do this with your orchards and your vineyards and your fields and this and that. And so there's an abundance of things regularly because everybody is doing it, but they're not all doing it at the same time, and they're not doing it while their fields at the same time. I think is the implicit thing here. Of note, it also doesn't seem to imply this here. Now we know in terms of the 10 Commandments earlier that the Sabbath day you shall rest and this and that. But this is a little bit more relaxed. You got to work 6 days and on the 7th you rest. But again, it doesn't specifically say here, at least in this verse, that it needs to be the same 7th day for everybody. So when you align the different narrative threads, you get sort of a more heavy-handed version of this. But I think it seems likely that there was a general custom at some point that you did, and it was built into the law, that you rested your fields every 7 years, and it didn't matter what the 7th year was. And you same thing with work, that it was something that everybody kind of did, but maybe at not the exact same time. And over time, it becomes on the same day. Any comments or questions on that?
Who is the resident alien? What do they do? Are they slaves or?
So there's you got basically 3 class. You've got people that are free and they're the Israelites, right? And there's no assumption here, right? First of all, we're in the wilderness, but there's no assumption that there's other people in the land. We'll actually run into that in later in this, maybe in the next chapter, later today. But there's no assumption in that in many of these laws that there's anything except us, and then there's slaves, and there are slaves. But there's a distinction between slaves. Like there's us that are free, and then there's us that may be slaves to us. And then there's slaves, which are not us. Right? So you might have, I might be free, and I might have a Hebrew slave, and I also might have an Egyptian slave. And they're treated slightly differently, right? By the law. And then there's people that come in from other places that live in the land. They're the resident aliens, right? And they could probably include anything from a refugee from Egypt to a very, very wealthy, maybe from Egypt too, or from Babylon, like a very wealthy person from Babylon and this and that. It seems, for the most part, that resident aliens are more like refugees, right? They're probably not very wealthy people that are kind of traveling through in caravans and things like that, or that are living there regularly, because the laws tend to be set so that there's relief for these people. It looks like a resident alien may essentially be, at least here, the equivalent of a slave, but not a homeborn one. Not 100% sure, but based on the context there. And if you go back up, the resident alien are people who are oppressed, and you know what that's like because you were aliens in Egypt. And what happened in Egypt? They were oppressed, and in some of the narratives, they were slaves there too. So that distinction is a little unclear to me, at least. But the lot in life of the person who is dubbed in the Bible the resident alien is not a good lot in life, right? And the Bible pretty much uniformly, especially through the Pentateuch, but also in the prophets, wants you to take care of people that are resident aliens, and whatever that means. But and if you think of this right here, you were resident aliens. Okay, well, they fled because of a famine down to Egypt, and they were down there, and then they came back up. And so, what is a resident alien? It's somebody who doesn't really want to be in that land, but is because their homeland is not a place where they can be anymore, or something like that. So maybe a refugee. All right. Charles, can you read the annual festivals? Charles is frozen. I hope he got my question. JD, can you read the annual festivals? Wait, Charles is back. Charles, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. If I can see it on your screen.
All right.
My screen isn't moving. I've got sabbatical year, justice for all. Here we have the annual festivals. 3 times in the year you shall hold a festival for me. You shall observe the festival of unleavened bread, as I commanded you. You shall eat unleavened bread for 7 days at the appointed time in the month of Abib, for in it you came out of Egypt. No one shall appear before me empty-handed. You shall observe the festival of harvest, of the first fruits of your labor, of what you sow in the field. You shall observe the festival of ingathering at the end of the year, when you gather in from the field the fruit of your labor. 3 times in the year all your males shall appear before the Lord God. You shall not offer the blood of my sacrifice with anything leavened, or let the fat of my festival remain until the morning. The choicest of the first fruits of your ground you shall bring into the house of the Lord your God.
And the milk. And read that last one.
I'm sorry, I haven't got it on my screen.
Oh, it says, and you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. That's the last one.
Crucial, absolutely crucial.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
These are festivals. So we've been reading along. What's missing? What's missing from our? You must celebrate 3 festivals. Which ones are missing? Or which one is missing at least?
Well, it was the Passover,
Passover. Yep.
Pesach.
Yep. Passover's missing. Obviously, it comes later, but like Yom Kippur is missing.
All right.
Shana is missing, and Hanukkah is missing. Right. So these come later, but Passover doesn't. Right. Passover is something that we literally read about a couple of chapters ago. And again, this is what happens if you begin to think about it in terms of the different narrators. This narrator has got basically 3 harvest festivals, and one of them gets linked to unleavened bread in Egypt. But this is probably originally a harvest festival. This is certainly a harvest festival. And this is certainly a harvest festival, right? These are grain festivals that all have to do with different types of things during the harvest. And so you appear 3 times and have a community celebration, and you sacrifice to the Lord during that celebration, and you all come together for these 3 big festivals. And you bring your sacrifice, which is some sort of grain offering and some sort of meat offering, and your sacrifice can't have anything leavened down here. And none of the fat gets to remain until morning, and it's the choice fruits of the ground, and some of you can't see it. You shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk, which is completely out of the blue in this, for what it's worth. But there you go, and that's what it is. Again, it may be worth clicking on this and seeing what happens to the Jewish festivals.
I have a question though. Isn't the festival of the unleavened bread connected to Passover?
It is, but it probably was originally a different festival.
Okay.
And this is one of the passages where you can guess that it probably was originally its own thing, right? Because Passover is, like, nobody talks about it as the Feast of Unleavened Bread. It's Passover. Like, that's the big one, right? And it gets lumped together. It was probably 2 separate things that they joined up, and you can sort of see the seams or the zipper getting put together earlier in Exodus. But the fact that this is just kind of randomly on its own, and it's listed as, these are the 3 festivals that matter. And it's like, whoa, what about the biggest one? Like, what about the Passover? And it's not listed there. So I'll read this. The story of the Exodus is central to several festivals that are celebrated by modern Jewish communities, including Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot. I can't pronounce these things. Some of these festivals, like Shavuot and Sukkot, were originally based on agricultural practices, with Shavuot representing the harvest of the first fruits, and Sukkot the end of the harvesting first season. They were called, if you remember, the Festival of the Harvest and the Festival of the Ingathering, right? Which is interesting in and of itself, that like you've got the early names and that sort of thing. Today, however, these festivals are deeply informed by the story of Exodus. So what happens is the Exodus story begins to implant itself in every single one of these. During the festival of Sukkot, which is booths, right? We know about this today. For example, Jews build temporary shelters that commemorate the Israelite building of booths during their wandering in the wilderness of the Exodus from Egypt. The modern Jewish tradition of abstaining from anything leavened during Pesach, biblical Passover, and the festival of unleavened bread. See, it's both, right? You got both there. Also comes from an idea found in the book of Exodus that the Israelites' bread did not have enough time to rise before they left Egypt. The main meal during Pesach, known as a seder, includes a bitter herb called marar and a sweet paste called chereset. These represent the bitterness of slavery and the mortar used to enslave the Israelites. Overall, the book of Exodus and its story are fundamental traditions that inform the celebrations of many Jewish festivals. That's actually really important to remember, is like what's in Exodus is not necessarily what's in the celebrations, right? The celebrations take things and kind of add and interpret them. So when we have, oh no, how do I get back? When we have this, right? Anything with leavened, and when we have earlier, you must not have anything leavened. It doesn't say you have to go through your house with a broom and sweep everything out, right? And then take that pile of potential leaven and burn it. That's the modern practice if you're in like an Orthodox community, is that you take every bit of, you sweep the whole house to make sure there's not a single crumb of leaven anywhere, like on the floor, anywhere. And then you take everything out and you burn it. And you burn all the leaven and all this other stuff. It's not required in Exodus. That's a later thing. And so a lot of what gets into the ritual is not necessarily straight out of Exodus. A lot of it is interpreted from Exodus. Yeah. All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. And I have no inkling, some of you may be able to see it, of this, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk. I don't have anything to say about that. So obviously, other than you don't do it. But as we read through, remember this, and let's see if there's any you can't have meat with cheese issues later in the Bible. This may be that, right? And in terms of how things get interpreted into modern stuff, you shall not boil a kid in its mother's milk is not the same thing as having a piece of a slice of roast beef and cheese. But that's not, you're not allowed to do that now. So, okay. Changing gears, but still in the covenant code. JD, have you read?
No.
Can you read the conquest of Canaan promised?
Sure. I am going to send an angel in front of you to guard you on the way and to bring you to the place that I have promised. Be attentive to him and listen to his voice. Do not rebel against him, for he will not pardon your transgression, for my name is in him. But if you listen attentively to his voice and do all that I say, then I will be an enemy to your enemies and the foe of your foes. When my angel goes in front of you and brings you to the Amorites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, the Canaanites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, I will blot them out. You shall not bow down to their gods or serve them or follow their practices, but you shall utterly demolish them and break their pillars in pieces. You shall serve the Lord your God, and I will bless your bread and your water, and I will take sickness away from among you. No one shall miscarry or be barren in your land. I will fulfill the number of your days. I will send my terror in front of you and will throw into confusion all the people against whom you shall come. And I will make all your enemies turn their backs to you. And I will send swarms of hornets in front of you, which shall drive out the Hivites, the Canaanites, and the Hittites from before you. I will not drive them out from before you in 1 year, lest the land become desolate and the wild animals multiply against you. Little by little I will drive them out from before you until you have increased and possessed the land. I will set your borders from the Red Sea to the Sea of the Philistines, and from the wilderness to the Euphrates. For I will hand over to you the inhabitants of the land, and you shall drive them out before you. You shall make no covenant with them and their gods. You shall not live in your They shall not live in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you shall serve their gods, it will surely be a snare to you.
Great. Okay. So we've essentially finished the covenant, and now we've got a promise, right? So this is the deal: is you observe the covenant that has just been told, and now this is what I'm going to do for you. And this sounds a little different, I think, than what most of us are familiar with, right? Most of us are familiar with they spent 40 years in the wilderness, following a cloud around and arguing with God and that sort of thing. And in this, it's an angel's going to go in front of them and lead them in, and they're supposed to follow the angel. And the angel is going to be the one that destroys the enemies, which is a little different than the Joshua story. And the angel's going to go in, and God is going to blot them out. And you can't bow down to their gods or follow their practices. And pillars is basically altars and what have you. So you've got to demolish their altars and their holy places. And I will bless you with water and bread and zero sickness and no miscarriages, and nobody's going to be barren, and you'll live as long as you're supposed to. And then there's this weird thing about hornets, which they don't know what that word actually means. So something is going to go in front of you and drive out the Hivites and the Canaanites and the Hittites and everybody. But then there's a note here which is interesting, but it's not going to happen all as fast as you think. It's going to happen over time. And so eventually they're going to be blotted out, and eventually you're going to increase and possess the whole land. And eventually the borders are going to go from the Red Sea all the way to the Sea of the Philistines, which is all the way up the Mediterranean, and all the way over to the Euphrates, which is really big, for the record. That would be a very big Holy Land. And so that's the promise. And it's in line with what the full narrative is, but it's kind of a specific version that we don't really see with the angel. And I will give you the note on the hornets things, because I'd love to see what they think about it. Yeah, it's just uncertain. They don't know what the hornets is either. Something is going to go in front of you, which will drive out the Hivites and the Canaanites.
My Bible says insect swarms.
Yeah, it's the same thing. They don't know what it means. That's the best anybody can come up with is some sort of swarm of something.
So my Bible also says, instead of angel, it has the word messenger both times.
Yeah, that's the actual word is messenger. Angel is messenger. The word that we have when we talk about angel, the actual word is messenger.
Well, one sounds physical to me and one sounds not physical. So
well, both in this context, both would be physical. I mean, it's angel and messenger are the same thing, but this is an angel that's going to be present with them and go in front of them. And as you go through the Bible, you'll see angels show up from time to time, sometimes in sort of more invisible ways that, sometimes you can see them, and sometimes very visible. But this is God's messenger. That translation is more accurate, and the reason they put angel here is because it's the idea is more of a heavenly messenger, as opposed to and we're going to send Patrice, and she's going to be the messenger, and she's going to walk you, that sort of thing. This is a messenger that's got the power to blot things out, and has the name of the Lord in the messenger.
I think we should do a whole Bible study on angels. That would be cool.
We could do that sometime.
I totally agree.
Someday, but that day is not this day. All right. Anything in this conquest of Canaan? I will say that some of these things are a pretty good high bar. No sickness whatsoever and no miscarriages. The bread and the water. It's like great, and then you get and in addition to that, so. But that's the promise, and so you get both halves of the covenant. This is what God will do in terms of delivery. Now, God has already taken them out of Egypt, right? So they're already kind of on the hook. And if you remember at the beginning of the whole thing, they said, anything that you want us to do, we'll do, because you've already taken us out of Egypt. So this is sort of the tail end of it. So they get taken out, and then they get replanted into Canaan. And one of the things that's just worth remembering, this is more like what happened than the Joshua story, where they go through and they wipe everybody out and they're all gone. What's more like it is that they get there, and over time they increase, and eventually it becomes their land. But this whole business of not following their gods, and this right here, not following their practices and breaking down their pillars and this and that, this keeps popping up all the way through the Old Testament. This is a problem all the way, again and again and again, that they keep worshiping other gods and they keep building other shrines, or they allow the locals to have their shrines and this and that. And this is a no-no. And actually does kind of inform how modern Israel, one of the challenges that is in the modern world, where we generally think, it's okay for different religions to sort of be side by side, but when you're in the law, it says you're not supposed to have other people there, and they're certainly not supposed to have their gods and this and that, right? Don't bow down to them, don't serve them. You must demolish them, break their pillars into pieces, and make no covenant with them. They shall not live in your land, lest they make you sin against me. For if you serve their gods, it will surely be a snare for you. So, like, one of the things throughout the Bible history and well beyond up to modern day is when bad things go wrong, there are plenty of people that are like, well, see, we're not following the law right here. This was the covenant, and we were not supposed to let other people in, and we've done that. So you get that all the way to today. All right, anything on that? Yeah.
Yeah, one quick question about the wild animals. I mean, I've been to Israel and that whole area. What wild animals? I mean, were there lions back then? I mean,
There are stories in the Bible with lions that show up. So you've probably got. So I'll give you the prime example, like Pelham. What wild animals, right? And then we had a pandemic, and we still can't get rid of the coyotes that are all over the place, right? Like,
yeah,
like
right behind my home.
and really what's going on here is if you get rid of the people, the wild animals come back way faster than you think. And so part of this is I'm not going to get, there's not enough of you to take over the whole land. So it's going to take some time, because if we don't take time, the whole thing will get overrun with wild animals, and that's not good either. It's actually a really interesting point. It's better to have the people that are worshiping other gods that might be a snare for you than it is to have the wild animals. Like, it's better to have those people here than the wild animals, because the wild animals are much worse. So, yeah, great point. Great point. All right. Bob, can you read the blood of the covenant?
Sure can. Sorry for dialing in. I forgot I was in Colorado and it's 6 a.m. here, not 8.
Oh, that's okay. You're here, so good.
Okay. Then he said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and worship at a distance. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up with him." Moses went and told the people all the words of the Lord and all the ordinances, and all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words that the Lord has spoken we will do." And Moses wrote down all the words of the Lord. He rose early in the morning, built an altar at the foot of the mountain, and set up 12 pillars corresponding to the 12 tribes of Israel. He sent young men of the Israelites who offered offerings and sacrificed oxen as offerings of well-being to the Lord. Moses took half of the blood and put it in basins, and half of the blood he dashed against the altar. Then he took the book of the covenant and read it in the hearing of the people, and they said, "All that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will be obedient." Moses took the blood and dashed it on all the people, and said, "Here is the blood of the covenant that the Lord has made with you in accordance with all these words."
Great. Okay. Two parts to this. First, there's a narrative discontinuity right here. So if we go back, and I showed you this earlier, where are we? Moses is on, right? We're here, and sorry, we're not here. Where is it? We 10 commandments happen, and then here. They witness the thunder. They say to Moses, "You speak to us." And while Moses drew near to the thick darkness where God was. So Moses goes up into the darkness. Then we get the law. And then we get, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders, and worship at a distance." And then Moses alone comes near. And then Moses went and told the people. So he's commanded here to go up, and his immediate thing is to not go up, but to tell the people. The short and long of this is that this is the continuation, and if you don't believe me, that's fine, but this is the continuation of the narrator that just had him way back before the 10 Commandments start to approach the altar with the trumpets and the fire and all this other stuff. And this is the continuation of from right here. He gets the law, and then he goes and he tells the people what the law is. And the reason this is in here will make more sense as we go forward, because there's a big theophany that hasn't yet happened that needs to happen. But you probably didn't notice it, but it doesn't make any sense if you're actually reading the narrative that Moses has gone up and then he's asked to go up again, which doesn't make any sense. and then he goes down, and then he goes up again. Moses is going in the wrong direction throughout this. Doesn't matter that much in terms of how you understand the story, for what that's worth. But I would say trust me in the sense of you've got the same mountain with multiple stories going on. There's 3 different narrators, and he goes up to the mountain in each one and comes down with something in each one. And in this one, he comes down with the covenant, and in another one, he comes down with something else, and in another one, he comes down with plans for the tabernacle. Be that as it may. Beginning at verse 3, you have the actual blood covenant. And I'm pretty sure when Jesus talks about this is the new covenant in my blood, which we hear every single time at the Holy Communion, that this is the reference point. Not Abraham, but this blood covenant that happens at Mount Sinai. Right? This is the agreement between God and the people, and it is in blood. And Moses, and so what they do is they take a bunch of animals, oxen in this case, they sacrifice them, and then they take half the blood and throw it against the altar, which, by the way, we never built. It's just there for what that's worth. And then he throws the other half on the people, and they respond by saying, we will be obedient. That is a very gross covenant, but that is what a covenant looks like, is you do things like that. So any comments or questions on competing narratives or the covenant?
Yeah. Back before, when it was like building an altar, it was supposed to be basically built out of dirt or unhewn stone.
Right.
And here, I mean, I don't know if the pillars are part of the altar or not, but if you're building pillars, it would seem to me they'd have to be built out of hewn stone.
Yeah, it doesn't always match up. Again, you've got
Right.
different kind of narrative lines going on, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah. There you go.
Before it was kind
I
of
don't know
rough.
well, so pillars.
I mean, before it was
Pillars
kind of
could
rough.
be, it could be as simple as rocks that are set up.
I guess.
Right. So if we were following it was in Exodus 21, I think.
Yeah, right.
It was the second part of the law after, right, law concerning the altar. It was the first part of the law. You get to build an altar, and it could be an altar of earth or unhewn stones and that sort of thing, and has no steps, and you can't use a chisel, right? So they're on the mountain. They had no altar, right? Now they do, right? It says that he builds it right here, I think.
Yeah, right, it does.
Right? So they had no altar, and so now they do, because he builds it in the morning and sets up 12 pillars. It's probably 12 rocks.
Okay.
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, I don't think we're thinking, I don't think like Greek pillars is, you're before.
Right. But I'm not thinking that, but at least I'm thinking something with a little height to it.
Yeah, it's probably an unhewn rock of some sort. I guess
Okay.
it could be wood too. It could be, I don't know. It's a great question, and I don't have an answer to it. But it's good that you're paying attention, because, like, right? No, seriously. Like, wait a second. I thought we couldn't do this, right? Like, I thought the altar was X, Y, and Z. So at least we know it doesn't seem to have steps, right? So,
Right. Okay.
So they do the covenant, and the blood is dashed back and forth on everybody. Any questions about any of that beyond the altar?
So, okay, the covenant is covering all of the things that Moses brings down and tells the people. So you're starting from the 10 Commandments all the way through the justice laws. Is that the covenant? And then the blood covenant is the actual throwing of blood? Like,
So the covenant is an outward sign. You basically have life is taken in terms of the it's a solemn agreement where a life is generally taken, which is the ox, right? The oxen are sacrificed, and there's and then the blood of the oxen is covered on the two things that the two parties, right? So one party is the people, and so they get covered in it, and the other party is the Lord, and they throw it on the altar, right? Because God is present in the altar is the idea there. The actual covenant, so this is the blood of the covenant, right? But the actual covenant is what we just read. And it's not clear if that includes the Ten Commandments or not originally, but it certainly includes it in the full narrative.
Okay.
It certainly includes it. But there was that break, right? The Ten Commandments happened, and then there's a break where Moses, I don't think we've gotten tablets yet either, right? There was a break where Moses came down for a second, or didn't come down, because the narratives are kind of messed up a little bit, right? There was a break where Moses goes up again, and there's thunder and lightning, and again, part of the problem here is it's not that difficult to untangle the narratives, and if you've got 3 narratives, they all go up to the mountain, they all encounter God, each one it's Moses, and they all bring something back down, and which is important for their future relationship with God, but it's not the exact same way it happens in each one, and it's not the exact same thing that's brought down. But in this case, it's crystal clear that this was the covenant. Whether or not the Ten Commandments are included or not is a different issue. And again, there's a lot more laws left that we haven't gotten yet. There's the entire book of Leviticus, right?
Right.
Deuteronomy has a bunch of things as well. So we'll see as we go through how that all gets put together. And kind of how it gets put together is, and this was also given at Mount Sinai. It's kind of like that.
Okay.
So it all kind of gets pushed back in to the covenant to a degree. But this is a unit that was its own unit at one point. Okay. We can finish this chapter, even if we go a little long. On the mountain, because this is awesome. Like, we got to finish this. Edda, can you read On the Mountain with God?
Sure. Let's see. Then Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel went up, and they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet there was something like a pavement of sapphire stone, like the very heaven for clearness. God did not lay his hand on the chief men of the Israelites. They beheld God, and they ate and drank. The Lord said to Moses, "Come up to me on the mountain and wait there. I will give you the tablets of stone with the law and the commandment, which I have written for their instruction." So Moses set out with his assistant Joshua, and Moses went up onto the mountain of God. To the elders he said, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. Look, Aaron and Hur are with you. Whoever has a dispute may go to them." Then Moses went up the mountain, and the cloud covered the mountain. The glory of the Lord settled on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. On the 7th day, he called to Moses out of the cloud. Now the appearance of the glory of the Lord was like a devouring fire on the top of the mountain in the sight of the Israelites. Moses entered the cloud and went up on the mountain. Moses was on the mountain for 40 days and 40 nights.
Great. Okay. That should be somewhat confusing because you have 2 different mountaintop moments, right? So the first one picks up from right here. He said to Moses, "Come up to the Lord, you and Aaron, Nadab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders, and worship at a distance. Moses alone shall come near the Lord, but the others shall not come near, and the people shall not come up." And then we got an interlude with the blood covenant. Then Moses and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and 70 of the elders, right? Picks up exactly where you'd think. And they saw the God of Israel. Under his feet there was something like a pavement of sapphire fire, like the very heaven for clearness. God did not lay his hand on the chief men of the Israelites. They beheld God, and then they had a picnic, which is strange. And I'll talk about that in a second. And then at the end, Moses enters the cloud. What you end up with is they go up twice because you've got 2 narratives coming together right here. And in one, you've got the sapphire pavement, and the other, and the break is actually right here. Who ate and drank is almost certainly the people below. In the canonical narrative, it's they go up there, and Aaron and Nadab and Abihu and the 70 and Moses, and they eat and they have a meal. But in the probably earlier narrative of this one, they have the blood of the covenant poured on them, and then they eat and drink because they've sacrificed all these oxen. And then after that, the Lord says, go up to Moses and go up. What it looks like, though, and the reason it's a little harder to tell because Moses is supposed to go alone, but then he goes up with Joshua, and it's just a little confusing. At the end of the day, what you have is the appearance of God on the mountain gives you two different views of what that looks like. One is they actually do see God, which is just fascinating if you think about it, right? They see God, and all that we get is a description of God's feet and what's under the feet. And then in the other, you get a description of the same mountain, same, they go up, and what happens, and the appearance is like fire on the mountain. So which is it? Well, it's both. It depends who you're talking to. But that's what's going on. And what's important for our narrative long term is these two guys get left in charge, Aaron and Hur, and whoever has a dispute may go to them. Does anybody remember what the first thing that happens is while Moses is up on the mountain and Aaron is left in charge? Anybody? We haven't read it yet.
The golden calf, I think.
The golden calf?
Golden calf, right? That's what's coming. It may be the next chapter. It's coming. Oh, it's not. So it is coming. But there's a huge interlude where we switch to our third narrator, and we get the directions of how to build the tabernacle for like the next 7 chapters.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So there's kind of a meanwhile, right? Like, all right, meanwhile, they go up and they see the Lord right here, and they beheld God. And then meanwhile, we'll go back to the other narrative. Now let's get them up. And now they're up. So we've got in one narrator, they're up. In the other narrator, they're up. And in the third narrator, they're about to go up again. And they'll get the instructions for the tabernacle. But this is really important, and it will come up in a couple of weeks, I guess. But Aaron and Hur are left in charge down below. And Moses is up there for 40 days and 40 nights. And by the time he gets back down, and in this narrator, he'll get the tablets as well. By the time he gets back down, they've created chaos. And if you remember what the first law of the covenant code was, it's the one that Aaron breaks.
No
and who
other
is Aaron
gods.
again? Aaron is who?
Aaron, that's a great question. Aaron is... Aaron, if you combine all the different threads, Aaron is Moses' brother, and he's the high priest. But that's not clear in every... sometimes he's Moses' brother, sometimes he's the high priest, so it depends who you're talking to as well. But Aaron is a major character, and if in terms of the covenant code, this is the beginning of the covenant, and the first law of the covenant: you shall not make gods of silver or gods of gold. Right? So... that's the covenant code. And we go all the way through these laws. We do the blood of the covenant. Same narrator right here. They go up. This is the law, the commandment, right? This is the tablets we've been talking about. That's that covenant. That it's going to be on the covenant. And so Moses is going to go up and get it. And it's going to take 40 days for this to happen. But meanwhile, Aaron and Hur get to be in charge. And as soon as Moses is leave, the first thing that they do, and it takes chapters to get there, because we get the tabernacle for like, I hope it won't take us weeks. We're gonna have to fly through this because this is arguably the most boring part of the Bible is the instructions for the tabernacle.
Unless you try and build it.
So what's so fascinating about that is you can't. Like,
I know.
you can't, and everybody has recognized that because the way it ends is it says. And God told Moses how to build it. And so you've got all these details, but you don't actually have like the key. and it's intentional that you're not supposed to be building this. Only Moses was supposed to be building this, right? Or they built it that one time and that was that. So yeah, but we'll have a long time later until this covenant code resurfaces. And it's worth remembering when we get to the golden calf, it's a follow-up, an immediate follow-up. 40 days later, but it's a follow-up to the to the covenant code and to the first one, which is don't make any gods of silver and gold. It's the first thing they do. Or don't make any images of silver and gold. Anyway, we're past time, but not horribly past time. Anybody have any final questions or comments? I guess not final, but today's questions.
So this is Moses' second time of 40 days and 40 nights, right? Because he went up before with the whole volcano thing, volcano-esque thing, didn't he, earlier? Wasn't he up there 40 days and 40 nights?
It's a good question.
Or am I wrong about
No,
the
you might not be. You might be right. Let me Bible gate
amount of time? Sorry if I didn't mean to keep us long.
Yeah, no. It's worthwhile. Let me see.
And why is it always 40 days, 40 nights?
That's a great question. Because we had 40 days and 40 nights in Noah too. Do you remember?
Floods.
Right. So let's
It's a
see.
good round number.
40 days. 40 days and 40 nights. 40 days, Genesis 7, Genesis 8, Genesis 50. They spent 40 days embalming Joseph. Moses is up on... No, this is the first one.
Okay, maybe
Moses is up on the mountain in chapter 24 for 40 days and 40 nights. Yeah.
Okay.
And we resume, I think it's 10 chapters later that we resume this line. And it's like 10 chapters straight of how to build the tabernacle. Thrilling stuff. Really thrilling. And it's actually fairly interesting. I mean, because like it's not stuff that we really think about, but it's kind of like it's like instructions about how you build a church in some sense, right? Like what are you supposed to have in your church? What are you supposed to do in this? And there's very, very detailed instructions about things, and it gives you a really clear line of the closer you are to God, the more precious everything is, right? Like all the gold is near God, and then silver is later, and then you get other metals after that. So.
Here's your pillars of the earth.
Pillars of the earth, yes. And
your cathedral.
What are they made out of? All right, very good. We will resume next week with more Exodus, but we're finally done the covenant code, so that's a plus.
Thanks.
God
Thank you.
bless.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Bye.